Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Horror Stories from the Internet. This time we are covering one of the most famous creepypasta icons out there, being known as the Tails doll. In this review, when I mean we are covering the Tails doll, I mean we are covering three popular Tails doll creepypastas that got Tails doll to be known as the popular creepypasta icon and popular video game internet urban legend that the Tails doll became known as today. For this special birthday episode, yes, this is a special episode that I intend to be uploading on either my birthday, late or early, who knows, maybe like today. Whatever day it's gonna be uploaded, it's certainly just gonna be, well, uploaded. So if it winds up as a late episode, then yeah. Anyways, and in this episode, joining me today is one of my best friends, Lightning E99, who helped me out with giving me background gameplay footage for one episode of Horror Stories from the Internet where I covered Sonic Endless. But yeah, if any of you want to check out his channel, the link to his channel is in the description below. Anyways, for these popular Tails doll creepypastas we are covering today, these three pastas are the classic Tails doll Curse creepypasta, Tails doll My Story, and for the last popular Tails doll creepypasta that we are covering, this one is one that I never even heard of until Lightning here recommended it to me to check out for this episode before I've decided this episode to be a collab episode with them. That creepypasta being known as Tails doll My Experience. So, let's check these pastas out and see how any of these three held up and on which in every one of them is better than the other or not. So yeah, sit back and relax while me and Lightning get into covering these three pastas for today's episode. Gil and his friend Noah were looking for games at their local for their Sega Saturn at their local game shop, EB Games, when they came across SonicR. Gil was going to ask how much it was, but when he got to the counter, the salesperson said for them to take the game for free and get out. When Noah had heard the salesperson say, "Take the game with you," he dropped the games he was looking at and ran over to Noah. "Did he say what we could have the game for free?" he asked. Gil was going to shake his head no when the salesperson said yes. Noah grabbed Gil by his arm and pulled them out of the store and to his house. When they got to Noah's house, Noah got his Sega Saturn and SonicR and put the game in. When the game started, they didn't see Sonic or Knuckles or even Tails. They only saw what looked like Tails, or rather a Tails-like plush on the screen for like the opening screen for the game. Noah thought it was just a glitch or that someone hacked it. The most likely chance is probably that somebody hacked it, but Gil knew it was more than a glitch or hacked game. Much more evil. The first thing they noticed when Noah started the first race was that the track was full dark red and black, and the music that was playing was "Can You Feel the Sunshine?" but played backwards. Noah thought this was a hack, but Gil thought the game was haunted. He didn't think that their copy was the only haunted version of the game. He thought all of the copies were haunted by Tails, or what looked like to be Tails. When Noah beat the first race, he unlocked Supersonic, Gil knew that Noah didn't get all 7 Chaos Emeralds, but Noah didn't question how he got him. But he did stand up and cheered for himself. How did you unlock him so quickly? Asked Gil.
I don't know, Noah screamed excitedly. Why are you questioning it, Gil? Something feels weird about this game, Gil said. The game feels haunted or something. You've been watching too many horror movies, Noah said. You know I don't watch that stuff, Noah, Gil said. Noah finished his second race with Supersonic when the game said a challenger was approaching. When the challenger approaching screen faded away, the screen faded into black and stayed black for about 2 minutes. It then cut to a picture of Sonic being violently attacked by what looked to be a stuffed animal version of Tails, with a very loud screaming and laughter for a split second. Then it went to the race. When the race started, Supersonic was standing on the track by himself after the "Ready, Set, Go" was said. Supersonic started to move by himself. Gil looked over to Noah and saw that his hands weren't on the controller. As soon as Supersonic crossed the finish line and Noah was able to capture him, and what looked like Tails was right behind him, when Supersonic and quote-unquote Tails crossed the finish line, it looked that Tails had won, but it said Supersonic won. That's when it said that they unlocked the Tails doll, and the Tails doll curse. When this happened, Noah and Gil looked very confused. Is that a letter? Noah asked Gil when all Gil could do was nod his head. Noah went to play as a Tails doll when the letter opened up.
Whatever you do, don't read that letter, Gil warned Noah. But Noah didn't listen and read it anyway. What it read was, "Can you feel the sunshine?" Lyrics backwards. When Noah was done with the TV started to vibrate. Noah took a hammer and started to hit the TV with it. The TV stopped vibrating. I stopped the TV from vibrating, Noah said. Yes, but now how do we play the game? Gil said. I have a TV in my room, Noah said, as he unplugged the system from the now broken TV and wall. You know that your mom and dad are going to kill you for breaking the TV, Gil said. I know, Noah said, but it was worth it. They then went upstairs to Noah's bedroom. When they got to Noah's bedroom, the broken TV started to vibrate again, and then the Tails doll came out. Noah and Gil were playing on a different game because of what happened. They were playing Sonic Adventure 2 on the Sega Dreamcast when the doorbell rang. Noah and Gil went to answer the door. When they opened it, no one was there. Noah closed the door, then the doorbell rang again. Noah opened the door and no one was there. He closed the door but kept his hands on the doorknob. The door rang again. Noah opened the door as fast as he could, but no one was there. The only thing that was there was a Tails doll. Noah brought it inside the house and washed what looked like blood off of it in the kitchen sink. When he washed the blood off of it, he sat it up in front of a couple of dishes to dry off and went upstairs. That's when the Tails doll stood up and flew off the counter and onto the floor.
Then walked to the stairs and he flew up the stairs. Then he went to Noah's bedroom. Gil then felt like they were both being watched by something evil. Hey Noah, do you feel like we're being watched? Gil asked Noah. You sure you don't watch horror movies? Noah asked Gil. Of course I'm sure. I have to go to the bathroom, Gil said. As he was walking to the bathroom, he saw something out of the corner of his eye. It looked like a Tails doll, so he turned towards his left and didn't see anything. He looked to his right and didn't see anything. He thought it was just his imagination and went to the bathroom. When he was going back to the bedroom, he saw something move, so he went to go see what it was. He then saw it move again and walked towards it. Gil saw the Tails doll and walked over to pick it up and bring it to the room. When he brought it up and showed Noah it, Noah asked Gil, "Where did you find it?" "I found it by the stairs," Gil said. "I thought I'd left it in the kitchen." Anyway, let's play SonicR again, Noah said. Don't you remember what happened before? Gil said. Yeah, so? Noah said. So do you want to kill your TV too? Gil said. That was a freak accident, Noah said as he put the game in the Sega Saturn. He then played the tag game as a Tails doll. And as soon as he tagged the last person, the Tails doll that was in the room came to life. Noah and Gil both stood up and walked towards the door. Noah opened it, and they both ran as fast as they could down the stairs and almost got to the front door when the Tails doll fell in front of them and killed Noah with his razor-sharp claws. This made Gil very angry, and he grabbed a baseball bat and started swinging at the Tails doll, each hit missing. He swung it one last time before the Tails doll caught it and broke it.
Gil then stepped on its head and ran to the kitchen and get one of the kitchen knives and swung at the doll, trying to destroy the doll with the kitchen knife. The Tails doll caught it again and killed Noah. The Tails doll went back into the upstairs TV. The police then came to the house because the neighbors called saying that they heard a lot of noise coming from Noah's house. But when they got there, Noah and Gil's corpses were both upstairs in Noah's bedroom. One of the police officers took the Sega Saturn to the station, and his partner said that there was no murder weapon.
After I got home from work, I thought I'd buy a game for my son. He was into the Mario, Sonic, and Donkey Kong type of stuff, so I got him a game I didn't think he had ever played. It was SonicR. It was a racing game, as I heard, and at the time was pretty new. I raced home to give him the game and kissed my wife on the cheek. I held her and she was happy for me giving him a present. The excitement filled his eyes and I could tell he couldn't wait to play it. He went back to his room and I was right behind him to play it with him. A couple of days passed by and he told me he was almost done with the game. I watched him beat the last boss and he roared in excitement as he beat it. I felt so good for him, patted his head and asked him how was it. The peculiar thing was, as I did, I looked at the credit screen and pointed and said, "What's that?" Pointing at a weird, metallic-looking character. He said it was the Tails doll. I asked what the Tails doll was. He just said, "It's the Tails doll." I facepalmed and ignored the scenery. I called for him to get into his bed, and as he was sleeping, the curiosity got the best of me. I went into his room, very quietly turned the volume down on the TV, and was ready to play some SonicR. Knowing he had already beat the game, I decided to play it through again and watching him from earlier. I noticed that you could play as the Tails doll. Knowing that that was the main reason I wanted to play the game, I chose him to tag up with some of the gang. It was actually pretty fun until I tagged him with Sonic. Right when I hit that button, my whole life changed. My life was in the palm of its hand. It was all calm at first, I must say. The screen shut off along with the game system. I let things be and went to bed with my wife. She grasped onto me as I did to her, falling in deep sleep. At around 2 a.m., I started hearing thumps on my door. Keeping it shut and knowing my son could get the game himself, I just said, "Stop, go back to bed." The thumping kept happening. I got very annoyed and noticed as I got up that there was a little shadow coming from under my door. Nothing at all compared to a regular-sized human shadow. I kind of started freaking out. The word Tails kept popping up in my mind. I just started to slowly open the door and heard these very faint words I will never forget. "You are coming with me. Forever." It was a doll. An evil, blood-covered, possessed little doll. It was from the game. It had to be. It looked just like it. I screamed, waking the whole house up as it started clawing at my toes.
Blood was all over the floor, and to this day my feet ache and are sore. It was growling very aggressively as my screaming got louder. My wife called the police. It scattered across the floor, running from me. Its screech was awful. It left a trail of my blood behind it. It said it has what it needs, knowing it can't finish its job tonight. Ever since that day, I am afraid to go to sleep at night. My sleeping patterns are scattered apart. I go to sleep at around 6 a.m. and wake up at around 8 p.m. to start my day. I know this may sound fake, but it isn't. I swear to this very day, I am shocked to even think about falling asleep at nighttime. So, a couple of days ago, I was looking through my attic for old stuff and something caught my eye. It was a box with the words games on it in Sharpie. I took a peek inside and found a Sega Saturn and some games. I decided to play it for old time's sake. After hooking it up to the TV, I began playing some of the games. Soon I came to the last game, SonicR. It was a Sonic the Hedgehog racing game, and I used to love to play it as a kid. I played it for a couple of hours, and soon enough I beat it. I decided to play with the tag mode and chose Tails Doll. The characters I had to tag were Metal Sonic, Mecha Knuckles, Egg Robo, and finally Super Sonic. The game's controls were not the best, so it was a bit hard. Soon I tagged almost all of the characters but Super Sonic. He was very fast, and so it was hard, but soon enough, after bumping all over the place, I tagged him.
For a split second, the screen turned red and it cut to a close-up of Tails tagging Sonic, not his super form, but his regular self, like as if tagging him sucked the chaos energy right out of him. After this, the screen abruptly went to black. Suddenly, something faded into view. It showed a grass field, which was the one from Resort Island, with a blue-colored bloody corpse lying on it. I didn't fully see it at first, but then I realized who it was. It was Sonic. I gasped in shock. His eyes were gouged out and his stomach was cut open with his entrails hanging out. Suddenly, Tails Doll appeared in front of Sonic's corpse with his back to the player. He turned his head around without moving the rest of his body, staring right at me. He then quickly turned the rest of his body around and I saw blood splattered all over him and his hands covered in it too. It said in a demonic, childlike voice.
Thank you for playing as we attack him with insult into helping me absorb his powers, which helps me break the barrier.
What the fuck? I shouted in fear. Get the fuck away from me, you demonic beast. The Tails Doll turned its head 360 degrees. When it fully turned around, its eyes were glowing red and it had a mouth with sharp teeth covered in blood and bits of flesh. It lunged at the screen and began to come out of it. I began screaming and started to run away. The Tails Doll growled and grew claws. It shot at me, pinned me to the wall, then began to claw at my chest. As my shirt ripped and blood began to drip from the claws wounds, I kicked it off and sprinted towards upstairs. I didn't look back because I was scared I would fall and it would get me. The Tails Doll flew in, growling, and I grabbed my baseball bat and hit its blood-red gem, shattering it in pieces. It screeched loudly and began to deteriorate. As soon as it was gone, I sighed in relief, knowing that I survived that damn beast. Now, I write this as a warning. Never ever play tag mode as Tails Doll. You don't know what trouble you're getting yourself into.
So my thoughts on the first one, the one with Gil and Noah. It holds up decently well, but a bit of it seems a bit far-fetched, with some cliches here and there, most notably the sketchy thing at the game store. But the weird thing about this one is that I remember an alternate ending where one of them died but the other one was able to escape into the sunlight, where the Tails Doll screeched and was reduced to ashes in the light. Aside from that, I feel like it ends a bit abruptly, but as far as old Sonic Creepypastas go, not too bad.
I'm gonna be honest, I remember very fondly of first reading both Tales Doll Curse and Tales Doll My Story, and remembering for a fact that I used to be a big fan of the Tales Doll My Story creepypasta, and remembering for a fact that back then I remember first being introduced to the Tales Doll by the Tales Doll Curse creepypasta, seeing one video by Mullet Mike on his creepypasta, on his creepy gaming episode, covering the Tales Doll Curse creepypasta, along with Mudahar's old episode on his old haunted gaming series, also reading and reviewing this creepypasta known as Tales Doll Curse. And also, I remember very fondly about those two videos covering a different version of the Tales Doll Curse creepypasta. That's not the one that me and Lightning just covered right now, and more so had like some differences, like for the fact that instead of like Gil getting a kitchen knife to try and have his last chance on killing the Tales Doll, I fondly remember it. Okay, I do exceedingly can confirm that the alternate version that Creepy Gaming and Haunted Gaming covered had it so that instead of Gil having a kitchen knife for his last chance on trying to destroy the Tales Doll, his last chance on trying to destroy the Tales Doll was him using a katana from his father's old ancient samurai collection, as said in this version of the story that I've listened on to and seen episodes of Mullet Mike and Mudahar covering that version of the Tales Doll Curse creepypasta, along with other differences like how the story doesn't mention Tales Doll coming out of the TV before Gil hears a ringing on the door and finds Tales Doll like outside of the house at their front door and stuff. I more so like it was more so like just after they broke their TV, they move over to the next TV, and they got like, and their doorbell ringed, and Gil goes to check over at the door for a couple times until he finally finds the bloodied Tales Doll at the front door's porch. Just randomly, instead of like mentioning that the Tales Doll came out of the broken TV first and appeared at their front door porch. But yeah. Anyways, alright. Okay. So so yeah. And yeah, despite the differences with the original Tales Doll Curse creepypasta, let's go over, yeah. And, oh yeah. What I forgot to mention was, Lightning also mentioned how he remembers a alternate version of the Tales Doll Curse creepypasta as well, where it had an alternate ending, where basically only one of them survives after, like, leaving the house and causing the Tales Doll to burn in the sunlight and just be deteriorated into dust. But yeah, anyways, enough of that. For Tales Doll Curse, I personally think it's kind of bad, but not too bad. I still kind of find it kind of a classic in a way, but I will have to say, I really love the concept it had for it and stuff. Just, unfortunately, the pasta itself just poorly executed that kind of concept and stuff. And the pasta was also unfortunately filled with many misspellings and grammar errors, along with the fact that some of the text kind of gets repetitive with how like Gil and Noah are talking. But yeah, the pasta was also unfortunately filled with one example being the fact that one example of the pasta's many misspellings and grammar errors is the fact that the pasta itself misspells the word movies 2 times. being spelled as moves instead of movies, which is really, I guess, like, maybe the writer at the time didn't, like, properly, like, didn't know how to spell movies correctly at the time, I guess. But yeah. Anyways, that's all I kind of got for here. Just, Tales Doll Curse had a cool concept for it and stuff, but it just was poorly executed.
As for the second one, I feel that it's pretty alright, but it feels kind of rushed. There are a few times during the reading where I got a bit confused on what was going on, like when he says that the TV and the console shut off. Did he do that, or was it just automatic and he didn't question it? As well as a lot of dialogue felt off, like when he talks about his wife hugging him in her sleep. And yet again, it has a very abrupt ending. The Tails doll tells the guy that he's coming with him forever, slashes him one time, then leaves? And then it just cuts off afterward. I feel that if this one was rewritten, extended, and had a better ending, I would love it a lot more. The story itself isn't half bad, it just needs a rewrite. I like it.
Anyways, now for Tales Doll My Story, which I will have to say, after finally revisiting this creepypasta and stuff, I will say it's not as great as when I first originally read it and stuff when I was younger. Kind of a tiny bit good, more, and kind of a tiny bit good and more decent than anything. I really loved the idea and concept for it, with how it was like about the main character being the father of a child. They just like got this copy of SonicR for his child and stuff, and that in this story, rather, his experience with the Tales Doll Curse basically only led to him getting severely injured in the feet. And that's basically why he was able to tell his tale, because he survived a attack from the Tales Doll, only getting majorly injured in the feet. But, anyways, like stuff like lightning mentioned and stuff, Tales Doll My Story also has many flaws too, which is why it's not as good as I remember it. And especially with the text that the Tales Doll says to the main character, like, "You will be with me forever," only for him to just, like, injure him, and just, like, after being found out that he was attacking the main character, the police was being called, and he just leaves immediately. I guess it's either that the Tales Doll was trying to attempt at, like, not only severely injuring the main character, but also sort of dragging his body over into, like, his world or something to kill him or something? I'm not sure. But anyways, another thing I also should think of, or should mention, is, or another theory that I kind of have in mind could also mean that when the Tales Doll meant by he should be with the main character forever or whatever, I think he meant it by in a sort of way like with the amount of like injuries he caused to him, he meant it in like he'll be with him forever in a sort of trauma in the back of the main character's head or some shit like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, this creepypasta, all it needs is a rewrite and just needs to be extended a little bit more to be a little bit more good than how it unfortunately winded up being like a more so tiny bit good, more decent story that wasn't as good as I basically remembered it when I was younger.
This last one. This one is good. I was actually freaked out getting the mental images for this one. If I saw this as a child, I would have had nightmares for weeks. My only real issue here is that it sets up TD to be creepy, then he dies from one hit, which, of course, is justified because he hit in his weak point. Which, I've never actually seen anyone else use the gem as a weak point of the Tales Doll, so that's creative. And one thing that I really, really appreciate about this one is that there's no yard sale or cashiers acting sus cliches. It's a completely innocent game that just got corrupted. Whoever made this, props to you. You just managed to be more creative than half of the video game creepypasta industry.
Now finally, the final Tales Doll Creepypasta we reviewed was Tales Doll My Experience. Now this one was recommended to me by the person who is collabing with me right now, aka Lightning, aka you know who. Yeah. This pasta was recommended to me by him before this episode was ever turned into like a collab episode with him and me. But yeah, at first when I found out about this creepypasta, I had low expectations for it and thought like some of the concepts that it was gonna go over could just were kind of like over the top, and I thought that this creepypasta wasn't going to execute its concepts or ideas any good or whatever. But after having read this and reviewed it now, I will have to say I actually found this story to be pretty good and much better than Tales Doll My Story, actually. And I actually expected Tales Doll My Story to be better than the Tales Doll Curse and Tales Doll My Experience creepypastas at first, but now after like having read Tales Doll My Experience, I think it's honestly the best out of all of these three creepypastas me and Lightning have reviewed and stuff. And yeah, I personally think it's like the best out of these three popular Tales Doll creepypastas we've read and reviewed in this episode. And from what I know, Tales Doll My Experience was the Tales Doll creepypasta that I remember that was introduced to me. I think like I remember completely fondly that Mullet Mike in his episode reviewing the Tales Doll Curse creepypasta, he briefly mentions the other two creepypastas that Tales Doll creepypastas he haven't covered. More specifically referencing Tales Doll My Story, and most likely referencing Tales Doll My Experience, referring to Tales Doll My Experience as one story that involved Tales Doll coming out of the TV. Which I'm pretty sure Tales Doll My Experience is the creepypasta that introduced the idea of Tales Doll coming out of the TV after finishing up tag mode and stuff. And yeah. And I really like, and despite how it has some like cliches with like the main character finding the game and stuff, I honestly still like the idea and how the main character got their SonicR copy out, and how it was literally just a copy of SonicR that they already owned in their house. And also kind of makes, and also with its way of like how the SonicR copy that the main character of My Experience had was just a copy he already owned. I like it. Also kind of gives it a gist and like on how like this whole entire Tales Doll Curse creepypasta myth that these Tales Doll creepypastas seem to go with, sort of like just shows off that the Tales Doll Curse urban legend myth creepypasta or whatever that these creepypastas go for is more so a urban legend or myth or weird anomaly that happens in the SonicR copies that people play, no matter whatever copy they have, whether it's a new copy they got or a old copy they already had and never tried out the tag mode or whatever. And I really like that. I will have to say, some of the concepts of Tales Doll My Experiences were a bit over the top and stuff. And yeah, and as we mentioned before, the over-the-top concepts it came up with for its creepypasta originally made me thought it was not going to execute those concepts well, and made me had low expectations for this creepypasta. But after reading it and stuff, it's actually pretty good. And yeah. So anyways, honestly, here's my ranking for all three of these Tales of Creepypastas, with the one being up on the top being Tales of My Experience, being the most best Tales of Creepypasta we've covered so far in this episode. Tales of My Story and being in the middle for being pretty decent. And Tales of Curse being at the bottom because personally it wasn't that good and I personally find it bad. And also Lightning considers Tales of Curse to be decent, but not that bad. And honestly, I do agree. Well, it is bad. It's not too bad. But yeah. Anyways, that's all for this episode of of Horror Stories from the Internet. Really thankful for my buddy Lightning E99 for joining us for today's special birthday episode, which is a pretty much of a late birthday episode with how I'm recording this right now. But if you have any creepypastas you want to suggest I check out next time, let me know in the comments. And if you got any creepypastas to share, check out my forums, the Danger 11 forums, or my Danger 11 forum site or whatever. This is Wonder Hellblazer, and I'll see you all next time in the next episode.